Uh-oh.
In her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. News broke late yesterday that Erika Cruz, reigning WBA Super Bantamweight champion, is just the latest boxer to test positive for a banned substance, per veteran boxing scribe Dan Rafael. I have the lab report, and WBA women's 122-pound champion Erika Cruz, who had a draw with Nazarena Romero in May 11th on the Matchroom Mexico show, was positive for stanozolol metabolites 16B, hydroxystanozolol,
What?
in a drug-free sport urine test on April 29th. Drug-free sport, that's the same anti-doping agency that handled the testing for Baumgartner versus Leonard Datu. This would be the second female fighter that has yielded a positive test result as a result of Matchroom employing their services. What Erika just tested positive for, stanozolol, that's a synthetic anabolic steroid with therapeutic uses in treating hereditary angioedema. Stanozolol is derived from testosterone and has been abused by several high-profile professional athletes. Now, Erika Cruz is just one among them.
As if we didn't have enough to talk about in association with Ryan's anti-doping case, now we get to talk about Erika's.
The difference between Ryan's anti-doping case and Erika's is VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, conducted the testing for Ryan, whereas Drug Free Sport conducted the testing for Erika.
Those are two separate agencies.
The difference when it comes to Ryan's case and Erika's is that Ryan is not a world champion. He's not under threat of being stripped of an alphabet title as a result of his situation, where Erika Cruz, she is the reigning WBA Super Bantamweight champion. As a result of this situation, will the WBA strip her of her title?
The fight was scored a draw.
Personally, I think Erika Cruz did enough that she could have been given the decision just based on what I saw, but the judges scored it a draw.
Right?
So if what we're dealing with now is a situation to where the outcome may be ruled a no contest,
That's practically the same thing.
it is. Neither Erika Cruz or Nazarena Romero walked away from that fight with either a win or a loss in the column. So if you make it a no contest now, as a result of this, it's practically the same thing.
The biggest issue is whether or not the WBA will so decide to strip her. How will they handle this?
If the title is vacated as a result of this latest anti-doping fiasco, Nazarena Romero may see herself either elevated to full champion, the title might go to her, or the WBA might let her fight for it against former champion Mikaelian Rivas in what would be a rematch between them. That's if Erika Cruz is forced to vacate the title.
We don't know that she will.
This news broke just late yesterday. We've yet to hear anything from the reigning world champion. We don't know how the WBA is going to proceed. It seems like every other month, some boxer is testing positive for a banned substance, and it's for this reason that the boxing community at large is desensitized to it. As far as many of us are concerned, there are that many more boxers in the sport doping than the audience realizes, so much so, you don't know how to feel. Is it that these fighters are pursuing a competitive edge by using banned substances, or is it that so many fighters are using banned substances, it's not about achieving an edge, it's about just trying to keep up?
It's not the same thing, you know.
If you're using something that, other fighters aren't using, or doing something that other fighters aren't doing, that gives you a leg up. That gives you an edge.
Because other fighters aren't doing it.
But if other fighters are doing it, if it's a lot of other fighters, well, now it's not an edge. Now you're just trying to keep up with the Joneses. So which one is it? Because it seems like every other month a fighter's testing positive for a banned substance.
It's all the time now.
As anti-doping testing is more prevalent in this era than it was in previous ones, that many more fighters are testing positive for these banned substances, which paints a picture that perhaps because it was like the Wild Wild West before, there were that many more people getting away with it, and now it's harder to do that.
I expect to hear, I don't know how it happened, I don't know where it came from, I would never do that, I didn't knowingly take a banned substance.
The usual.
Because nobody ever cops to the rap.
I never saw a fighter say, all right, you got me. I was cheating, I needed an edge, and I used this substance. I never saw that.
I don't think we're gonna see it now.
It's just more of the same, really. Yet another disappointing bit of news that broke yesterday from the men's cruiserweight division. Mikaelian versus Rozicki has been postponed. What is supposed to be the WBC cruiserweight title fight between Mikaelian, the champion, and Rozicki, the challenger. Armenian Norer Mikaelian was scheduled to defend his World Boxing Council cruiserweight title against the tough Canadian Ryan Rozicki on June 7th in Hollywood, Florida. Unfortunately, Noel picked up an injury in his training camp. He suffered a cut above his right eyelid, and it had to be sutured, so his world title defense will have been postponed. Mikaelian won the WBC cruiserweight title by knocking out Congolese Lunga Makabu in the third round of their November bout last year. Rozicki booked his spot after surprisingly knocking out the experienced Nigerian Durudola. More information about this card presented by Don King Promotions in association with the Heavyweight Factory will be announced soon.
Well, hopefully it gets rescheduled.
Assuming that was going to be a box office show, a box office card behind a paywall to where you have to pay to see it, you have to pay per view, I was actually going to buy it on the premise of this fight. This one, not the main event, not Adrian Bronor versus Blair Cobbs.
I was gonna buy it to see this, so you can imagine my disappointment when this news broke.
Found out last night, and I couldn't even physically talk until today. But he pulled out or postponed. I mean, I feel like he postponed because he got a cut over his eye, but you think I haven't gotten fucking cuts over my eye during this camp? You think I'm not fucking hurt? Think I'm not injured? But, there are all kinds of emotions right now. This is my whole life. This is everything for me, this fight. And it is what it is. And I understand it's not the tough man business anymore. It's the smart man business. And, he's got to prepare for a guy who's coming to fucking kill him for 12 rounds. So I understand that he needs more time to train, and he can't go in with a little fucking cut over his eye, as if that was going to stop the fucking what was about to happen anyway. But listen, I just got this gut feeling that this is going to be the first postponement, and I got a lot I want to say, but at the end of the day, I wish him a speedy recovery, and I really do hope that he heals and he prepares properly when the time is right. And I'll be here. No, I will be here waiting, and I will be ready.
Yeah, you can imagine my disappointment. Moreover, you can imagine Ryan's, because the fight date was just about 2 weeks out. Most of the work, most of the preparation would have already been done.
With just about a week left to prepare, and then fight week.
By the time fight week rolls around, all the preparations have been made and all of the work has been done. So once again, you can imagine Ryan Rozicki's disappointment that he's worked his way up to this point. He rebounded off the loss at Bridgerweight to Oscar Rivas, won a string of fights.
After moving back down to cruiser.
One of string of fights, landed this WBC title fight just for a little over 2 weeks out from the fight. Noel's got to pull out. Noel is injured.
Ryan doesn't buy it.
He seems skeptical. In his own words, he said, this is not the tough man business, this is the smart man business. And Noel Gavor may be postponing this fight, not because he's injured, but because he's a smart man, and he knows he's got a live animal, a live dog in front of him, who's going to do everything he can to take his head off. Ryan Rozicki is a rather violent knockout puncher.
Kid's good.
I've seen several of his fights, and Ryan Rozicki is not the kind of boxer that walks into a boxing ring looking for a boxing match. He's not trying to leave it in the judge's hands, let it go to the scorecards. He's trying to put you down and keep you down. He's trying to put you out, and that's what he wanted to do to Noel Gavor. On the other side of this fight are all the major fights for Ryan, all the major paydays in many ways. That also applies to Noel Gavor.
The unification matches.
With Jai Opataya, reigning IBF champion, with Zurdo Ramirez, reigning WBA champion, with the winner of Billum Smith versus Riakporhe for the WBO title. On the other side of this fight are all the major opportunities. Both men just have to get past this last hurdle, this last obstacle.
The cut had to be sutured.
The cut on Noel Gavor's eyelid. Now, I've seen no images myself of said cut to assess its severity and how long it might take him to recover. I can only assume that if they really are trying to reschedule this fight, then they can reschedule it for sometime maybe in July or August, over the summer months, because it's a cut, but it's just a cut.
Now, if by some chance enough time passes to where Noel Gavor ends up fighting somebody else,
say one of the other champions at the weight, it'll make it that much more obvious what the nature of the postponement was. Risks versus rewards. That for risking your title, your champion status against Ryan Rozicki, you might as well go unify with somebody.
I'm not complaining.
If he does end up trying to unify with somebody else instead of facing Ryan, instead of rescheduling this fight, no, I wouldn't complain, but it still means what it means. That you weren't really injured, you were just trying to find a way out of this fight.
Don't you think you're jumping to conclusions?
No, because I said if. If the fight isn't rescheduled, if the fight doesn't happen, and if Noel ends up fighting somebody else, if he recovers right on time to get a bigger fight for a bigger purse with another fighter, that'll tell
the story.
if it happens that way. We'll see if it does.
We'll see.
Finally, in men's heavyweight news, on the heels of this past weekend's action, former unified champion Anthony Joshua is ready to fight anyone, says Eddie Hearn. That includes the winner or the loser of this weekend's fight. After sharing 24 rounds with the brilliant Ukrainian, two-time unified champion Joshua undoubtedly recognized Usyk's lung-bursting late effort and felt that his second-half effort carried him to a deserved victory. He had Usyk winning quite convincingly. Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, told Matchroom Boxing, "I went over and said, 'What do you think?' He said Usyk's won. Great fight, but Usyk's a comfortable winner. I think most people felt Usyk won. It's just how wide they saw the cards."
He won, but by how much?
For perspective, Boxing News has an app that allows users to score the fight themselves, give their take on it, and 80% of them had Alexander Usyk winning the fight. So it's really not a question of who won. I myself think people are exaggerating Fury's success. It's really just about 4 rounds. It all boils down to 4 rounds.
5 if you're generous.
And I'm not. I gave Fury rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, you could either give Fury the 3rd round. Some people think that's a swing round. Some people think the 12th round is a swing round, but I don't.
For me, it's 8-4 Usyk with an additional point due to the knockdown in the 9th.
A decisive victory. Seeing how just well-received Usyk versus Fury was, the prospect of a money-spinning undisputed trilogy fight between Usyk and Joshua, or a battle of Britain between Fury and AJ, might just convince them to push the matter to the bottom of their agenda for a little while longer. He's ready to fight anybody. He'd love to fight Usyk again. He'd love to fight Tyson Fury. He's happy to fight Hrgovic. He's happy to fight Dubois. Happy to fight Parker, Wilder, any of them. You've not got a problem with Anthony Joshua. Anybody who wants it can get it. But at the same time, he wants to regain his heavyweight championship. It has been speculated that Anthony Joshua may face the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois for what could be the IBF title.
Because Alexander Usyk has a mandatory outstanding, and because he's on the hook to give Tyson Fury a rematch, it would seem he can't satisfy his mandatory via the IBF, so that IBF title will go to them, will go to the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois.
At least, that's what was originally thought. The latest seems to suggest that Usyk's team is going to ask the IBF to make an exception for that rematch with Fury. They don't want to let the red belt go. They want the rematch with Fury to be for undisputed, the same as the first fight was.
Do you think the IBF will pardon them?
No. Years ago, the IBF didn't hesitate to strip Tyson Fury when he found himself in this same predicament. Years later, the IBF didn't hesitate to strip Canelo Alvarez, the cash cow, the face of boxing, due to his outstanding mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko and their inability to reach a deal.
They didn't hesitate to strip Tyson Fury. They didn't hesitate to strip Canelo. They didn't hesitate to strip Joe Cordina.
And he was actually injured. He injured his hand. But they didn't hesitate to strip him. They put a lot of pressure on Josh Taylor, in so many words, forcing him to vacate his IBF title. That's what they did.
So thinking about all of these previous instances and then looking over at this, I don't actually expect Usyk to get consideration.
Usyk doesn't fly the right flag. He's not from the right country. Oh, that's right.
Right.
I can come right out and say it, because I don't have any professional relationships I need to worry about maintaining. The IBF is biased. The IBF is partial towards Americans.
You heard it.
Think about Errol Spence Jr., who reigned as IBF champion for something like 5 or 6 years. It was the first alphabet title that he won. He won it in 2017. And in about 5 or 6 years, he only ever satisfied one IBF mandatory for them. They never put the pressure on him that you see them put on other fighters. The only mandatory he ever satisfied for them was Carlos Ocampo in 2018. Now, you could argue that they gave him special consideration due to the car accident in 2019, but he returned to action in 2020.
No mandatory.
He sat out all of 2021.
No mandatory.
Fought at least once in 2022.
No mandatory.
And no pressure. The same applies to former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo, who was allowed to negotiate step-aside deal after step-aside deal after step-aside deal for roughly 2 or 3 years with Bakram Murtazaliev, who had been waiting in the queue since before Jermell even won that belt in 2020. Bakram was mandatory as of 2019, but the IBF allowed that, so they're very selective about who they want to put pressure on, and it seems to me that they are biased towards American fighters, but not Ukrainians.
So I don't expect Alexander Usyk to get special consideration.
Neither does Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn, who has now said he's unsure if Usyk will be stripped of or vacate his IBF title in time for the Hrgovic versus Daniel Dubois fight on June 1st. However, Hearn does not expect an exception to be granted by the IBF to allow Usyk to keep the belt for the Fury rematch. In this scenario, the vacant IBF could instead end up being on the line if Joshua does indeed face the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois September 21st at Wembley. In other words, Eddie don't expect them to give Usyk consideration either.
Based on their track record with non-American fighters, they won't.
Whether or not you think that's right or wrong, I'll leave such judgments up to you.
Do you think it's fair?
That so soon after an undisputed champion has been crowned, after such a long time without one in the heavyweight division, the IBF is putting all this pressure on Usyk.
Do you think it's fair?
Do you think this is a necessary process, a necessary evil, and they're just doing what needs to be done? How do you feel about it?